Hey guys, what's up? It is Public back with another video, and today we're going to be looking at another covenant. Today we're looking at Necrolord and what parts of it are good, bad, and just frankly ugly. And more importantly, what do I like about it? What do I think is good? And maybe help you guys make your decision about what covenant you're leaning towards picking once we get into Shadowlands. Alright, let's get started with what I like and what is good about the Necrolord covenant for Shadow. Okay, so first things first, let's talk about Unholy Nova. I think it's actually a pretty great covenant ability in terms of its damage. It is very boring, one of the most boring covenant abilities that we have, but, you know, from a Mythic Plus perspective, it's going to be very strong, right? The only caveat is, you know, it is a dot that you put AoE around you, so, again, you have to be in melee, you know, you do have to make sure the targets live long enough, but I think it's still good enough to put it in this good category, simply because of its Mythic Plus potential. It is a 15-yard range ability, which, you know, isn't that hard to get into that close of melee range inside of a Mythic Plus dungeon. Just be careful you don't pull something you don't mean to. So definitely I think in that good category. We'll talk about some of the ugly parts a bit later. Another good thing about this covenant is a Fleshcraft. So this is your covenant signature ability. And honestly, it's just a great shield to have and to channel between packs, especially in kind of Mythic Plus environments. And that extra utility that you get from augmenting this ability from your soulbinds makes it even better. So I think it warrants enough to put it at least in this good category, specifically for Mythic Plus. Definitely have some problems kind of outside that environment just because there aren't natural downtimes in a lot of other content necessarily. So, but yeah, that's pretty much all the good things about this covenant. They've kind of ripped some parts out that I did like, making it a little bit less desirable. But, you know, let's talk about what can be improved. Let's go on to the bad section. Okay, guys, so what is bad about the Necrolord covenant? Well, first things first, let's bring back up Fleshcraft, right? From a rating perspective, Fleshcraft is very difficult to kind of figure out where it makes sense. You're effectively just going to be using it pre-pull, right? Which is fine. You know, you're just kind of hoping that there is some damage to go out in the first 2 minutes of the fight, which there probably will be. But it's not going to be that big of a shield because, again, the shield gets bigger if you absorb dead mobs, which if you're on a progression fight, there's nothing around you. You probably already killed the trash, so... not that it's dead or ineffective, but that just really hurts it here. And for the most part, there really aren't any points, at least in this first raid, Castle Nathria, where there are, like, good, like, kind of in-between, like, phases or downtime within bosses to be able to make sense to channel this. So there can be a bit on Kael'thas depending on what you're doing, and if you clear ads out, like, super quickly, so it's probably not progression. But, yeah, it's just, like, finding a niche for this inside of raiding is very difficult, which... just probably makes it one of the kind of worst covenant abilities from like a rating perspective, at least the signature, but that's what it is. All right, so moving on to other bad things. I'm going to start with one of the first soulbinds you get as a Necrolord, which is Plague Deviser Marleth. I think parts of this are kind of interesting. There's a lot of cool utility, like you can pick locks or do other things like that, but from like an actual like DPS throughput perspective, it's just bad. There's just not enough here. The first ability, Volatile Solvent, that everyone gets, again, very situationally useful. Basically what it is if you use Fleshcraft on a specific mob type, you get different bonuses. I'll put those up on the screen now. So again, some of these guys are just, you know, primary stat, mastery, critical strike, damage done, all kinds of things, right? Some of them are kind of funky, like, you know, durability or whatever, or visibility. They're all kind of random stuff. But again, very situationally useful. Like if you're in a Mythic Plus, you're probably killing a lot of humanoids and beasts, which, you know, you get mastery, that's great. You get primary stat, great. But again, that just depends on if you get those mobs and if, you know, you remember to even push the button. So, again, very situationally useful. And again, you're dependent on Fleshcraft's cooldown. So, it can be useful. It's just, it's so weird and kind of niche that because it has no guaranteed thing other than just the shield, that I don't think it's good enough. Moving on to the level 2 guy, you are choosing this over a conduit, or the throughput conduit, so keep that in mind. So we have Plague's Preemptive Strike here, so your first attack or spellcast on it may increase your damage done to them by 10%, but just for 5 seconds, and this can only be on one target at a time, so its usefulness is pretty sporadic at best. Okay, Mythic Plus, but in a raiding environment, this is effectively useless. I mean, you're just not going to notice this at all, so pretty disappointing. So I think almost always you're going to take the conduit row or tree path instead of this guy, but time will tell. They could always change it. So, and kind of wrapping things up with this covenant, this is the only kind of, this does give this soulbind a little bit of a use, which is its last ability, Ultimate Form, which makes you immune to crowd control while channeling Fleshcraft, and then 4 seconds after Fleshcraft. So you can see already this covenant is very deep into Fleshcraft things. There's almost everything here is augmented by that, or you get something after using that. How useful that is about that immune to CC, I'm not really sure. I mean, I guess, but again, it's not helping your throughput, which depending what you're looking for might not be what you want. So from like a PvE rating perspective, yeah, in my opinion, this is a pretty bad soulbind, because Fleshcraft just doesn't make sense there. In Mythic Plus, maybe get some more uses, but yeah, pretty bad. All right, let's move on to the ugly stuff. Okay, guys, so for the rest of the Necrolord stuff that I have categorized as ugly, the reason why I put it in here is because, you know, it can be considered bad, but I think I put it in this ugly category because I think it could be there. It's just parts don't work correctly, or they don't interact very well with our specs, so let's go into those. So first things first, I brought this up earlier, Unholy Nova is just ugly. Again, there's no interaction with our spec. It is a dot, but all the things that we have about, like, if you have more dots on the target, X, Y, and Z happen, or maybe Void Torrent would extend it. Nothing. There's no interaction like that at all, which honestly is pretty sad, making it kind of useless in single target, or at least not that great in single target. And again, this is only as good of an ability as long as the target lives, right? It is a dot, so it's unlike, you know, Holy Nova or other instant AoE spells. You have to make sure the target's actually living here, so you can't use it towards the end of a pack. For the most part, you have to use it at the start of one. It does have a short cooldown, which is nice, but again, just kind of ugly. And again, you do have to be in melee range to use this. It is a 15-yard range ability on your targets, which is kind of annoying in a lot of scenarios. Not as much in Mythic Plus, but definitely still annoying in rating. You know, small footnote here, because you have to be within 15 yards of this, that does mean you're now out of range of being able to use Shadow Crash on those mobs, which is a new redesign they've worked here. I wanted to bring this up because I think the Shadow Crash rework is just kind of plays, you know, butts heads with the spec here. This is a great example because Shadow Crash has a minimum range of 20 yards. So if you're in the 15-yard range to use the Unholy Nova spell, you can't use Shadow Crash, which that overlap, it doesn't happen that often, but can be kind of annoying. And again, it just has weak single target. There's nothing here that says like the dot ticks more if it's only on one target, or kind of relative to how many targets you have or whatever, making it more or less the worst Covenant ability we have from a single target perspective. And again, that's assuming you can get in range, which is just frankly pretty ugly. All right, so moving on. The second soulbind you get, I also put in this ugly category. Before, Amini used to be one of my favorite soulbinds that we had, especially for Mythic Plus, but they kind of gutted the soulbind recently, probably because it was a little too strong, but let's go over what it has. Again, situation, this might be able to be good, but they've changed it enough now where I don't quite know where they're going with this. So first things first, you get to choose Amini's Ambulatory Flesh, which means you can channel Fleshcraft while moving, which is pretty nice. Again, making it easier to cast on the move. If you're, you know, chaining Mythic Plus packs together, just cast it on the way to the next one. Great. In the level 2 ability here, you can choose this or a Throughput Conduit. So you gain 1% haste after defeating an enemy, up to 5%. Again, pretty solid. This is something you could relatively keep up most of the dungeon if you're taking this in a Mythic Plus environment. Obviously, in raids, this is basically useless. You're not killing that many mobs, maybe on a fight like Kael'thas or others, but for the most part, you're not going to get a whole lot of use out of this. This is easily the best part about this soulbind. The rest is just kind of meh. And then the last ability that you get, that you always get, is called Embody the Construct. So after using 60 spells or abilities, your next Fleshcraft will heal and deal AoE damage to 5 mobs near you. This is really strange. I really don't understand this, because the whole point of Fleshcraft is to use it on dead mobs to make the shield bigger. But this is saying you want to use Fleshcraft to AoE things? I don't really get it. It kind of goes against like the whole design of the spell, which I guess it reverses it. I mean, maybe that's kind of interesting to some people, but I just don't see the use case here or how big that is. I mean, obviously casting 60 spells will take a good chunk of time, but it's, you know, and, you know, I guess they could tune the damage, but I don't know. That's it's a little different. Not the thing for me. I think I like what we had here before, but anyways, that's why I put it in the ugly category. Okay, so moving on to the last soulbind. Again, this looks pretty ugly to me. So this is Bonesmith Hermir, however you say that. So this isn't bad. It's probably going to be your rating choice, but it's still not great. There's still not enough here, I think, to really make it strong, in my opinion. I think looking at the other covenants specifically, it just doesn't hold its own weight. So first things first, you get to pick up Hymir's Arsenal Marrowed Gemstone, which is after landing 10 critical strikes, you gain 20% increased critical strike for 20 seconds. But it does have a 1-minute cooldown, right? So you can pick this up if you're not putting a conduit in that row. Honestly, this is actually pretty solid. This will probably make you want crit a bit more, which is fine. I think it's kind of interesting interaction for sure. We do cast a decent amount of spells, so I don't think this will take too long to get that up. You should be able to get it up every minute. Not a big deal. So honestly, not that bad. The problem is that's really all this guy has in terms of like a DPS throughput here, right? The last ability you get, which is kind of the crutch of a lot of these soulbinds here, is Forgeborn Reveries. After you die, you can continue to fight for 10 seconds, but you deal 50% less damage and healing, right? I mean, it's kind of interesting, I guess. You know, you just walk around dead for an extra 10 seconds, but you're doing 50% less damage and healing, so I don't really know how impactful it's going to be to the raid. I guess if you're on progression, maybe this could really save you. It is 10 seconds, who knows? But yeah, it's very situational. I think it's flavorful. It can be neat, but there's nothing here baseline. You're giving up a lot just to get this, and that's why I put it in the ugly category. All right, guys, that is it for the Necrolord Covenant. Let me know what you guys think. I know a lot of you guys are really excited to use this guy if you're interested in Mythic Plus, but I don't know if the potential's there, guys. The Soulbinds really kind of hurt this Covenant more than anything right now. And again, the Covenant ability itself is pretty boring. So anyways, let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.